Welcome back to Hashtag Griff Sports. I am Joe Retigliano, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Roxanne Hernandez.
Although all of our Griff teams were on the road this weekend, there was still some very exciting action.
That's right, Rox, and let's get straight to the action. The men's basketball team was on the road at Quinnipiac on Thursday in what was probably the biggest game of the year for the Griffs. Needing a win to keep pace with Iona for first place in the MAC, the Griffs needed to rebound the ball especially well in order to win this game, and the Griffs did exactly that.
That's right. The Griffs and Quinnipiac were even in the rebounding battle, with each team having 38 rebounds apiece. Jordan Heath had 10 rebounds to lead the way for the Griffs, while Billy Barron had 20 points, Chris Perez chipped in 17 points, and Zach Lewis threw in 15 points to help the Griffs to an 86-74 victory.
And on Saturday, the Griffs took on Fairfield at Webster Bank Arena in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and the last place Stags gave the Griffs a run for their money in the first half, only trailing by 4 points, 33-29 at the break. But the Griffs would put up an impressive 51 points in the second half to pick up the W 84-58. Chris Manhertz led the way for the Griffs with 14 points and 10 rebounds and one incredible screen. If you get a chance, look that up on YouTube. And Dominique Grady had 15 points off the bench for the Griffs, pushing their winning streak to 4 straight.
The Griffs are set for their toughest weekend of the season as they're preparing to take on the Manhattan Jaspers on Friday and the Iona Gales on Sunday. Coming up, we'll send it to Studio B where Kyle, John, and Jordan will break down the matchups.
And later, Griffs hockey beat writer for the Griffins, CJ Gates, will be in studio to talk Kyle Gibbons and the Griffs matchup with Niagara tonight. You're watching Hashtag Griff Sports.
Welcome back to Hashtag Griff Sports. We are in Studio B. Kyle Ferrara alongside me, John Langley, and Jordan LaBarbera, your tag team of Griffs men's basketball beat writers for the Griffin and for Hashtag Griff Sports. And guys, we're going to preview this huge weekend coming up with games against Manhattan, against Iona. Before we do that, like we do every week, let's go through some power rankings. We're only going to look at the top half of the league this week because that's kind of all that matters. So, John, why don't you start us off? I mean, you're the sole creator, mostly, for these power rankings.
Well, I'll start at 6 with Siena. They've been making a nice push as of late, and they're definitely the surprise team in the MAC this year. We thought, especially when we wrote in the paper, St. Peter's would be that team, but Siena at 6-6, they've really made a push. Ryder is sitting at 8-4 and 12-9 overall, and they're a solid team, but they're definitely not up there. 4 as Quinnipiac, the team that was really the riser in the MAC, and they've fallen off a little bit, but especially with that loss to Canisius, but 4 is nothing wrong. 3, we have Manhattan, who was the preseason favorite. Number 2, Iona, and number 1 is your Golden Griffins. They are the best team in the MAC right now, and this weekend will go a long way in deciding whether they stay there.
Jordan, what do you think? You agree with Langley's observations? Or?
I do. You know, big stride for Canisius taking that top spot. I believe we had Manhattan in there the week before, but Manhattan's hitting a rough stretch. You know, they lost a couple of games last week after almost a flawless season, with the exception of a hiccup against Fairfield, bottom team Fairfield. And but Canisius, 8-0 at home. They're beating the bad teams. They're beating the good teams. They're really hitting their stride, and I think this is the best I've seen Canisius play in the time that I've been here. I've been here 3 years, including last year's great team, 20-win team. This is the best I've seen them play.
There's no doubt about that. This is the best they've played. I've still argued that last year's team may have been more talented as an overall team, but they never pieced it together, and they really fell off at the end of the year. This team is playing like a team. They're all doing what they need to do to win the games. And Zach Lewis coming up big. I don't think anybody really thought he'd get as far as he has at this point, that he'd even make that point. And that's something that's been huge because he really takes the scoring of last year's Isaac Sosa, and he adds that to the team.
It's interesting. I found myself wondering a few weeks ago, like you said, last year's team was more talented, so I wondered, is the difference this year just Billy? Because last year Billy didn't take over scoring as much as he has this year. He had a few games. He had the game at Niagara where he really took over, but this year he's doing it time and time again. And I wondered, is he the difference? But the last couple of games, Billy was, not down scoring, but down from the standard he set this year, and the team hasn't lost a beat. Zach Lewis isn't Isaac Sosa, but as far as shooting the balls just yet, but he's filled in perfectly, and the team hasn't missed anything.
Well, the last point I'd like to make is the emergence of Manhertz this year. He started off the year rough, but that was because of injury. He had an ankle injury, I do believe, and now he's starting to come along, get his rebounds, get his points. Jordan Heath, well, it's not consistent scoring, but he's going out and rebounding the ball really well, and that's something. They've had a slight jump in their rebounding total just the last 3 games, and that's an area they needed improvement, and if they want to continue to win, they're going to have to continue to rebound the ball well.
Well, I agree with both of you. I think this is the best that any of the 3 of us have seen them play since we've been here. And they proved so much to me with that victory on the road against Quinnipiac. And I know most of us thought they were going to lose that game, and somehow John Langley got thrown under the bus for that. But it was a huge road win, especially considering how well Quinnipiac can rebound the ball. There was a 274 difference as far as teams between Quinnipiac and Canisius going into that. So that was the biggest game they played this season. Are the 2 coming up bigger, the same? How are these matchups looking?
Well, in terms of standing, they seem bigger, but Quinnipiac was a matchup nightmare for Canisius, and people will argue Manhattan is as well. But the last 2 games I've watched from Manhattan, they don't seem to have that big of an advantage in certain areas over Canisius. Beeman is starting to fall off a little bit. He went from averaging 22 points per game. Now he's down to 18. He's not scoring it quite like he was. So that's at this late in the season, that's a big drop in points per game. Alvarado's still playing his game, but Ramel Brown is probably your scariest guy underneath. Ashton Pankey, if I'm being 100% honest, within 5 feet of the basket, that's where he really makes his hay. Outside of that, he's not doing very much. Canisius, with their increased rebounding, they've been doing a lot better. I think they match up really well with Manhattan. As with Quinnipiac, they average 47 rebounds per game. That is unheard of. That it's crazy that they rebound the ball that well, and that is the game I thought would trip them up. And they didn't. They tied them up with 38 rebounds apiece. They really crashed the boards well. Jordan Heath had, in my opinion, the best rebounding game he's had all season, and that proved to be the difference. If they play like that against Manhattan, they will beat Manhattan if they play that way. And they have to shoot the lights out like they did.
And really given the parity of the MAC, every game's as important as the next. The worst team can knock you off in the tournament. The best team can knock you off in the tournament. So really with seeding on line, Canisius is in the #1 spot now. Each game's important. They want to keep that #1 spot. They want to go in with matchups in their favor. With that being said, you really do want to get used to beating teams like Manhattan and Iona. That way, their confidence is up going into the tournament. They know that they can beat them. They know that they can do a good job against the top competition in the conference. So I think in that respect, this weekend is one of the biggest weekends all year.
It's the biggest. There's no doubt about it. When you go against the preseason favorite and the preseason #2, it's big. And the chance to sweep Iona, so in case there is a tie at the end of the year, you get the tiebreaker. You want that advantage over Iona. So that Sunday's game I'll argue Sunday's game's a bit bigger than Friday's matchup. What makes Friday's matchup so big is it is ESPNU. It is at the Kessler Athletic Center. This is something that Canisius has not had for a while. There's an aura around this team that I haven't seen at least since I've been here.
But you don't want Manhattan knocking off the #1 team at the Kessler Center Friday, and that being where they turn it around and get hot again. So
yeah,
really got to look out.
That's something you definitely have to be scared of with the Jaspers. Obviously, they're a team that last year, without Beeman, got hot at the end and ran their way to the MAC title, which nobody thought they were going to do. And with that being said, everybody likes Canisius right now, like you guys were just saying. But which of these 2 games presents the biggest opportunity for a team to get hot? Is it Manhattan, like we were just talking about? Or does Iona come in with a lot of fire because we went into their place and already beat them this year?
Iona's already on fire right now. They've rattled off some wins, and they're winning very impressive. 5 wins in a row. And they're really firing on all cylinders. Everyone's scoring. David Lurie, A.J. English, Sean Armand, they're all scoring very well. Mike Poole's starting to pick up his game. He's a transfer from Rutgers. They're a team that's really starting to click on all cylinders, so they're a team that's already hot. So, if they win in the Kessler Athletic Center, while it's not a great loss to take. There's no such thing as a good loss. You can kind of understand it. With Manhattan, they're reeling right now. This is a team you have to take advantage of, and you've got to get the win. I think if Manhattan wins, that's the game that could really trigger them, get them moving forward. So I think that's the team that's scariest if you take a loss to them.
I agree with John, but really it's about, making sure you have sound game plans. You're ready for what they bring, and just learning from these games, win or lose, learning from these games and bringing that game plan to the MAC tournament with you. I can see Canisius, beating Manhattan, beating Iona, and then losing to either team in the tournament. That's just how it is. So it's really about, picking up the game within the game. The wins and losses, that's about getting your seeding, I think.
That's all it is. It's seeding. You want Canisius. You saw it last year, and that's the perfect example. If Canisius draws anyone but Iona, they probably win that game. They got
Maybe
an
the whole
Iona.
tournament.
They might have won. They could have won the whole tournament. Niagara was. I'm going to be 100% honest. I thought they were a faulty king last year. I didn't think they were really the best team in the MAC based on observation. I could be wrong. I might be a little biased in that regard, but they never struck me as the best team in the MAC, and you saw that with Manhattan and Iona being in the finals, that really any team in this league can win and get. It's about getting hot at the right time. It's about Canisius keeping up what they're doing. If they play solid fundamental basketball the rest of the way like they have been, Canisius is one, if not the scariest team, one of the scariest teams to play in the MAC. No one wants to play them because of what they can do.
Well, that's why fans of any of these top teams should be excited for the rest of the season. And with these games coming up, do you think fans of the Griffs will turn out the way they did for Niagara, or is that game just too special of a matchup? Are we going to see the same kind of excitement?
They're going to see a similar turnout. Joe was talking to me before. He said they gave out all 500 of their student tickets. They gave out about 700 prior to Niagara. They might be getting more to give out. So we'll see that student section full. I think the question is whether or not they're going to behave the same way. I mean, you had that place roaring. Whether or not they're going to be roaring when there's not a away crowd to antagonize, when there's not that rivalry on the line. We're not really too familiar with Manhattan as much as we are Niagara, a local team. That'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure.
Well, I hope that they turn out, and I think they are going to turn out. And something that we've talked about in depth is this is a team that the students really need to come watch, because this isn't going to last forever. You're not going to get a chance to watch a Billy Barron every year. You're not going to get these types of players. You have to turn out and come watch this team. This is a special team at Canisius. We haven't seen anything like this since John Beilein, who is now the Michigan coach, was coaching here. We've not seen anything like it. Jordan and I are at every game, every home game. We've seen it. And the one thing we've really agreed on is we haven't seen anything like this. This team, I know it's an old cliche, but they find a way to win. Like against Quinnipiac, I'll go back to that example. I sat here and said, there's no way they're going to hang with Quinnipiac on the boards. They proved me wrong. That's great. I love seeing a team prove me wrong like that, because it's something you don't expect. And that's why I truly think if you're a student at Canisius College, you have no excuse to not get to the Kessler Athletic Center. It's not that far of a walk. I want to see the students there, because this is something special.
Speaking about Billy, I mean, he scored 38 points in front of an NBA scout last week, and I asked him about today, whether he knew the scout was there, and he brushed it off. You could tell he really wasn't comfortable focusing on himself more so than the team. But one thing you got to understand is, people are getting excited. As good as this team is, knowing they have a chance to watch a player like this, I really think people are starting to realize, what's actually going on here. And I really think that's a big crowd drawer.
And there will be more scouts. There will be more scouts coming. I have no doubt about it. That's just the beginning. The scouts won't start coming until about the end of February. They'll start coming around that point. You're going to see more and more. They might even be in the stands. You might walk by one of them and you won't even know it. So I think that's enough to get people to the stands. We'll see if it works, but
might even be sitting next to one and not even know it.
Yeah.
Well, that happened to the three of us last
That's
week,
true.
absolutely.
That's
and
true.
let's hope that the students come out and give Jim Barron another chance to give a mumbled thank you speech after the game for how great the student body was. Coming up next, TJ Gates is going to be on with Joe Retigliano to talk Griffs hockey. We'll be right back on #GriffSports.
There was one day that we had just done the cardiovascular unit, in class that day. And then right after class, I went over to the Vascular Institute, volunteered, put the scrubs on. And one of the doctors asked me if I wanted to see an open heart surgery. And so I said, yeah,
really?
sure.
I came into Canisius as obviously as a freshman, not really sure what I wanted to do. I ended up taking a digital media arts class, and that really just kind of jump-started, my career.
And I think being where we are in the city and in the world with the medical campus that we have here is really an opportunity that I wouldn't have anywhere else.
It's more than just academics. Meet different people. Go out and do things. There's so much more to college. It's an experience.
I instantly fell in love with doing video work, graphic design. I started pursuing more and more opportunities in the school, whether it was doing admissions videos on the sides. I did a couple videos for alumni relations, the president of the college, and then I actually got noticed last year, and they sent me over to the Philippines to create a feature-length documentary.
I lived with a host family while I took classes in Spanish with Spanish professors at the University of Oviedo, and I was a Spaniard for a semester, and it was the best decision I made as a college student.
And welcome back to hashtag Griff Sports. CJ Gates is with me, the Griff TV and also Griffin hockey beat writer for the Canisius hockey team. And we're going to talk about Kyle Gibbons real quick. And we just got a thing here. And let me just make sure it's in there. There we go. It is in there. And that is the statistics line for both Kyle Gibbons and Corey Conacher, who now plays in the NHL with the Ottawa Senators. So right now, I mean, if you got it to take a look, this was in last week's edition of the Griffin. And now as we look at this, Kyle Gibbons has played a few more games than Corey Conacher. Corey Conacher's got a ton of points. I think that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But Kyle Gibbons, in this edition, it said that he had 53 goals. He scored one over the weekend. He's only 8 goals away from setting the Griff's record for most goals in a career here at Canisius. Tell us about how Kyle Gibbons has been playing lately.
Kyle Gibbons has been playing pretty well lately. He started off a little rough. If you talk to Coach Smith, he wasn't really scoring, but he was still contributing in other ways. Didn't necessarily show up on the scoreboard, but he was definitely playing well, and now he's starting to score more.
All right, and another thing that we see with the Griffs hockey team and really any hockey team is it's about when you get hot. And as of late, I know there was a couple of games in a row where Kyle had scored quite a bit, so that's really big. Now, Corey Conacher was obviously before our time here at Canisius. Has Kyle Gibbons said anything about what the scoring record would mean? Taking it from a guy he played with. Has he said anything like that?
I think it's definitely something that is important to him, but it's not his main goal here at Canisius. I think he definitely wants to win as a team more so than set individual records. Yeah.
Right, and that is the measure of a true team player. Now let's talk big weekend for the Ice Griffs. We've got 2 games against Niagara. Tonight's game is at Niagara at Dwyer Arena, and then Saturday, Niagara comes down here to play at Buff State. How big are these games for the Griffs?
They're incredibly big. Niagara's just 1 point behind Canisius. They have 1 less win, but they have 1 more tie, so they're just 1 point back. And if they take 4 points this weekend, they'll definitely move well ahead of the Griffs, and it'll be tough to catch them.
Right, and also another pretty big thing I would say for us here at Canisius College is the Battle of the Bridge. And we wouldn't want Niagara to take the lead this weekend because each hockey game is worth 1 point. Where Canisius leads by 1 right now. So 2 points gives Niagara the win, not the win, but the lead, and we can't have that. So tonight's game at Niagara, what do you think? What do you think for tonight? It's on the road. The Griffs had a 4-1 lead there earlier in the season, but could not close it out and lost 6-4. What about this game here? Is possibly could this be the turning point?
it's definitely tough to predict what is going to happen because, as you mentioned, the game that they played earlier this season, the Griffs had a lead and then they couldn't close out the game. So I think it's really impossible to predict what's going to happen tonight. But Niagara's been playing well lately. They've won 3 of their last 4 games, so it'll be interesting to see what Canisius does.
Absolutely. And Saturday night, the game comes back here. I would say for the game here on Saturday, that's going to be the one that the Griffs need to make it away with at least 2 points this weekend. That would be really big. I think that one of the things to notice for this team, as much as any, is they played a lot like they did last year. It's been a slow start. They've been playing well against some teams, and they haven't played well against others. Mm-hmm. But I think this might be, this is the team that we're just waiting. It's a waiting game, and sooner or later, hopefully they just get hot like they did last year. And I think one thing, Tony Capobianco, he's the guy we're waiting for to really come on strong. Mm-hmm. Now, Kyle Gibbons is up for the Hobey Baker Award. Tell us how we vote.
How do you vote? You go to hobeybaker.com, and then you click on a menu, and then you drop down. It says Kyle Gibbons. You can vote for him there. Doesn't look like he's going to win, but can still support him anyway.
We can say, and as of right now, it looks like he's not going to win, but if you keep voting,
anything can happen.
Anything can happen. All right, thank you, CJ.
No problem.
And when we get back, we'll have Roxanne back at the desk. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about the women's basketball team and their weekend coming up with Niagara and Quinnipiac. Stay right there. And we're back. The women's basketball team has been slipping a little bit as of late, but they have 2 big games this weekend.
That's right, Joe. The women's basketball team plays host to Niagara tomorrow as part of a doubleheader with the men's basketball team. The women's game will be available to stream online at ESPN3.com.
And on Sunday, the women's basketball team will play in Hamden, Connecticut against Quinnipiac. 2 wins this weekend could really help boost the women's basketball team as they push towards the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference tournament. And right now, I believe they're actually in 8th place, so need a couple W's this weekend.
This weekend, the Griffs softball team kick off their season as they travel to Cleveland to take part in the CSU Viking Indoor Tournament. The Griffs will take on Bucknell and Robert Morris on Saturday, followed up by Bowling Green and Cleveland State on Sunday afternoon.
All right, and Rocks, our golden performer of the week.
It is the Griffs power forward Chris Manhertz for his performance in that game against Fairfield. Manhertz had 14 points and 10 rebounds as he hit every shot he attempted from the field. And Joe, that makes his 12th career double-double.
Oh, that is pretty impressive for the big man. And if you get a chance, please go on YouTube, look up Chris Manhertz screen. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. That just about wraps it up here for us at hashtag Griff Sports. Make sure you make it out and support our teams this weekend, Griff Nation. Also, we have a new show here for you on Griff TV to tell you about. It's Griffin Insiders, new episodes every Monday, hosted by Claire Durgel with Aiden Ryan, Kevin Daly, and Anthony Croze. And I'm Joe Retigliano.
And I'm Roxanne Hernandez. This has been hashtag Griff Sports. Good night, everybody.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.